Good evening, listeners, and you're very welcome along to Across the Line here on Tipp FM with myself, Paul Carroll, on this Friday, the 3rd of April 2026, all with thanks to the Premier Credit Union in Thurles. Over the course of the next 45-50 minutes or so, we're going to be looking ahead to the weekend sporting action. We'll hear from the Tipperary Under-20 football manager, Paddy O'Gorman, as they take on Waterford this evening at 7 o'clock. Also, we'll hear from James Woodlock as the Tipperary minor hurlers begin their campaign against Clare in Thurles at 7 o'clock this evening. That's coming up in just a few moments' time. We'll also reflect back on the Tipperary Under-20 hurlers game against Waterford on Wednesday night. We'll hear from Brendan Cummins, and Shane Brophy will join us to talk about those games and also about the county championship draws which took place last night in Thurles and have thrown up some really interesting groups across hurling and football. So we'll talk all through that, and then to round off the show, Barry Drake will give us the rundown on what's happening in the world of greyhound racing. So let's get straight into it, and we'll start with the minor hurlers. They take on Clare in Semple Stadium at 7 o'clock. You might be on your way to Thurles right now. Well, earlier in the week, yesterday, I caught up with James Woodlock to look ahead to the game, and I began by asking him about, now that it's his 6th year as the Tipperary minor hurling manager, what kind of keeps him coming back to the role?
Sure. I suppose, Paul, that the enjoyment of bringing young players through. I got a lot out of hurling myself, Paul, and hurling with Tipp, and I know what it does for the younger generation coming through, both in relation to hurling and in relation to life in general. You know what I mean? So I think sport is very important for for every young chap coming along, and I also think that hurling at the top level is a special thing, and I like to nurture that. Coming through all the academies myself years back and coming through the squads and the teams up along, I know the value of it, and I know the value it is to these players coming through and how badly they want it. And if I can aid their progress, their avenue, their roadway in any way and help them along, it's good. And then I suppose when you get success, it keeps you there, it keeps the hunger there to come back for more, obviously. And then I suppose having Tipperary, the senior team, back at the top table, and knowing that the system is working with the minors coming through to them from our setup is it's really pleasing. So all that, a combination. And look, I enjoy it. It's my time away from everything else, really. So yeah. And the management team I have with me, and look, I wouldn't say it unless I was enjoying it, but it's just a real interest to really, Paul, to keep Tipperary hurling at the top, and that's what I've endeavoured to do since I got into management, and especially managing with the minor team. Yeah,
and we've seen that transition from both success at minor and under-20 level, and then transitioning up to the lads involved with the senior last year that you would have had in a few years gone by. But the team this year, the squad has been named, the team for Friday night's game has been named, but I think, is it 7 players that are involved this year that were there last year? So fairly, relatively kind of a new feel, I'd say, to the squad in there this year, is it?
Yeah, completely new feel, really. We have a handful of players that seen a small bit of game time last year, and the other players you alluded to probably were on the panel here and there. So entirely new squad. Started off, a couple of months back with them, and they've worked really hard. Huge amount of work has gone into them, and so yeah, we're at championship. Every year once you hit Christmas, it just sneaks around, and they say maybe the older you get, the quicker time goes. But it's proven that we can't play challenge match till 1st of February, Paul, really, so we had that spell as well. We had trained well up to that, then we had our challenge games, and now we're ready for championship hurling. Relatively new squad, a lot of work goes in, because you have to open their eyes to every eventuality. That's our job, so that, when they come through to cut and trust and once the championship hurling, that obviously both technical, tactically and mentally, that they are fully right for the game and for the night, and then obviously they are young, Paul, but you are trying to open their eyes to everything to give them the easiest passage to perform in Semple Stadium tomorrow night.
Yeah, like you are dealing with young lads, some of them are probably only doing their junior cert this year, and that sort of thing that you always kind of have to keep in mind when you're talking about the minor grade, it's particularly at under 17. How are we fixed in terms of lads that are up to the age 17 for let's say even the starting lineup on Friday evening?
14 out of the 15 are up to age. 14 out of 15 are up to age, and then one player has another year to go after that. But look, every year is different. Last year we might have had maybe 2 or 3. The year before we had 1, and then in 22, I think, and we had nobody. So it just depends. Look, my job, minor is probably the hardest grade to manage that, really, because you have to go through the county for the first time, and you have to pick these players. You have to watch every club game, every school game, the development squads, and and then you bring in a cohort of players, and you hope they're the ones that are going to sustain Tipperary future for a long time. And I think the transition have been really good since our spell, trying to get players up and running and pushing them into Brendan, and then obviously ultimately onto the senior team, and that has been good. So minors, we have to go to every club, no matter where you are in Tip. You're entitled to play Tip minor hurling if you're good enough. Divisions doesn't bother us or anything like that. If you're good enough, you'll get your opportunity. If you're good enough, you play. And the boys just got to do their jobs tomorrow night.
Yeah, and that's been proven in some of the teams we've seen down through the years under your management, with 13, 14, even 15 maybe at times clubs represented on the starting 15. But this year, last year, if we reflect back quickly on last year, missed out on a place, finished bottom in Munster, but like the score difference, I'd say, was about -5 for the 3 games, or for the 4 games. Lost some really tight games. So I'd imagine first goal for this squad this year is to be one of the 4 teams to get out of Munster at the minimum.
Yeah, ultimately it is, because it's for the betterment of the squad. Paul, it gives them more exposure to hurling and so on like that, but it's not that easy. Get out, as everybody knows, and it doesn't matter the grade you play at. It's just Munster hurling is so competitive, and it's a brilliant competition. But it is competitive, and you just have to go after it, and you have to attack every game, and that's what we've always done. That's the way we set our teams up, that you always go after them. And when the opportunity arises, then you have to take your opportunities, because the margins are so tight. Last year, Waterford a point or 2, and Limerick the same, and you're out of the championship, and that is really difficult when you're so competitive. You just needed a bit of luck, needed a break, and just couldn't get it. But the team, itself has done a huge amount of work, and are set to. Are set to perform, but it's just the age bracket you're always conscious of, that the first game is so important at every age level. It's just so important, but we'll be telling the boys, like we've always done, just attack the game. We've always done that. That's what the very people want to see. That's what supporters want to see. We're known for playing on instinct, and I'd never take that away from any player. Should always play on our instinct. Of course, you'll have tactical and so on like that. Decisions to make for the team, and you play to your strengths and all that, but Tipperary people, like our seniors, are doing so on like that, and 20s have done for the last couple of years, is play attacking brand of hurling, and that's what we'll hope to see.
Yeah, well, it all gets underway Friday evening, 7 o'clock in Thurles against Clare. This Clare team beaten in the All-Ireland final last year. I think they have a good cohort of that team lining out on Friday evening against Tip. So they'll be an experienced side. And have you got to see them, Joe? It's kind of hard probably at this level to know exactly what you're coming up against, given the ages and how players develop rapidly at this age.
Yeah, it's hard to see him, and normally you wouldn't see him collectively. You'd see him with schools here and there. But look, ultimately I was at the minor final last year. We've seen a lot of these players. They have 9-7 starters, I think, coming off that minor team last year, or have seen action in the final. So they have loads of experience coming with them. And obviously they're beating finalists last year, so they'll have that bit of hurt coming as well this year, So we're under no illusions. It's like every team we're going to play, Paul. They're going to be really difficult opposition, but we do know Clare are probably top of the pile in Munster. We know we're going in definitely actually underdogs into the game, because they're the team that are being talked about from where they're coming from, and that's fair enough. But we'd like to think that we've a lot of work done, and we turn up, we perform, we'll give a good account for ourselves.
Well, James, we wish you and the squad the very best of luck for this match on Friday evening and for the championship going forward. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Thanks, Paul.
And that was my conversation with James Woodlock yesterday, looking ahead to that game, which is just getting underway at 7 o'clock down in Thurles against Clare in FBD Semple Stadium. Well, another big game that's happening this evening at 7 o'clock is down in Waterford and Limmy as the Tipperary under-20 footballers take on the Daisha in a game where if Tipperary can win or draw, they will secure a place in Phase 2 of the Munster Under-20 Football Championship, which would mean they'd be starting off against Kerry next Thursday night if they can get that result tonight in Waterford. That is the most important thing. So earlier this morning, I caught up with the Tipperary Under-20 football manager, Paddy O'Gorman.
look, we know it's a big one. Kind of, I suppose, we're kind of focused on trying to get a performance for the whole 60 minutes tonight. We kind of performed in patches against Clare, and performed in patches against Limerick as well. I suppose in the second half we got a really good performance. And so our big focus over the last 10 days was just trying to make sure that we have a performance that will last longer than what we have been doing. And look, we know the results tonight is massive to get through to the second stage. So, but I feel if we do get the performance, hopefully the result will look after itself. But Waterford are a very, very good team. I know some of the boys from last year are on that team, and even one of the lads is one of our best players inside in school, in high school. So yeah, we'll be up against it down in Amy Bryan, but hopefully we play well anyway and get the performance that we need.
And I'd imagine you've taken good confidence from that second half performance against Limerick, because that was when you probably saw the team in full flow at the full kind of strength of their abilities. We got to see that in that second half. I'd imagine the team, management team, players have taken good confidence from that second half against Limerick. Yeah,
and I suppose in the second half we kind of pressed up on their kickouts, and look, it's all about kickouts now, and with the new rules, like, so if you're not winning kickouts, either your own kickouts or the opposition kickouts, you're under pressure, like. So in the second half we kind of, and don't underestimate the win in the second half, in the first half and the second half. Like, we were against it in the first half, and obviously with it in the second half. But we played front foot football in the second half, which is great, like, you know, and that's what we're trying to get into the players, like, just let's go forward, don't sit back, like, just go, and kick it if it's on, you know, and don't be afraid to play. Sometimes, like, the boys are a bit nervous to do things, and we're trying to get that into them there the last few games, like, just play off the cuff a little bit more, like, you know, because we have great forwards, and I think in the second half, because we're 6 down at half time, they felt, right, we have to play here now, and let's go and do it, like, so they had another choice but to do it, and in fairness to them, they were very, very good in the second half.
Yeah,
and plus we used, with the bench was outstanding that day as well, like, so every player that came on kind of made a difference, and that's what it's all about, like, you know, we've 38 or 39 lads in with us, including a couple of lads from the extended panel training with us, so all those lads are invaluable, like, and in fairness, the way the championship is structured, like, it's week on week, so, like, we've changed our 24 again for tonight, because lads, we kind of make sure that we play 15 on 15 at least once in the week of training, so, and we reward lads then that are going well in that match, so that's why there's a couple of changes tonight in the 24, and lads have been rewarded because of those games.
Yeah, and just finally on Waterford, like, they beat Limerick in their opening round, got 4 goals in that game, so they know tonight they have a home game against Tipperary, and if they can win, they'll be playing Kerry next Thursday night in phase 2 of the championship. So, like, this is kind of set up to be a very exciting, a big game for both teams.
Yeah, it's like a final to both ourselves and Waterford, and look, I know how proud those people that are playing football for Waterford. There's a few of them boys in school with me, and they really care about football, and, like, they're excellent club teams down in Waterford, so, like, they compete in the Munster Senior Football Championship, the likes of the Iron, Rathcormac and all them teams, like, and then not to mention the city team, St. Saviour's, like, they're all very good players down there. They have a couple of really, really good marquee players that we have to watch tonight, like, so it's going to be a humdinger, and look, hopefully we'll come out the right side of it.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Paddy. Wish you the very, very best of luck. Hopefully a positive result down in Waterford this evening, but very best of luck to yourself and all the players.
Thanks a million, Paul. Thank you.
So 7 o'clock is the throw-in time down in Leamy Bryan there for the Tipperary under-20 footballers against Waterford. We're going to take a quick ad break. After the break, we're going to be talking under-20 hurling, and we'll be reflecting back on the county championship draws which took place last night. All that coming up after these. And you're very welcome back to part 2 of Across the Line here on Tipp FM with myself, Paul Carroll, on this Friday, the 3rd of April 2026, all in association with the Premier Credit Union in Thurles. Well, let's reflect back now on the Tipperary under-20 hurlers who made it 2 wins from 2 in the Munster Championship. That was on Wednesday evening down in Fraherfield, Cappoquin Logistics Fraherfield, and it was a 16 points to 15 point victory for Tipperary against Waterford. And after the game, myself, John O'Shea and Stephen Barry of the media all spoke with Brendan Cummins, the Tipperary manager. Let's hear that now. Brendan, a win down here in Fairfield, they don't come easy, a difficult day out there, but a win is a win, as I say.
Yeah, it is. There's no doubt. The lads dug it out. It's probably one that Waterford will have a huge amount of regrets over, obviously, over the course of it. But as I said to lads in dress room there a few minutes ago, it's important. We got 4 points out of the first 2 matches. It doesn't say on the league table how you got there. And beating Cork at home and coming down here with a very, very good Cork or Waterford team. We saw them playing against Clare, and they didn't get really the breaks against Clare either, but they're youthful and they're building, and they gave us some test tonight, and we're blessed to get out of here now.
Going in at half time, you played against the Breeze in the first half. You're up by a point, 11 points to 10, but the second half, whatever way it played out, was extremely low scoring. We put up 5 points, they put up 6, I think, in the second half. Describe that second half, because it was a real kind of battle out there.
Oh, it was, that's the word, it's a battle, and the wind kind of dined out from the hurricane status down to that kind of a breeze, we'll call it. And in fairness to Waterford, like, they had the penalty chance. Paddy brought off a great save. Ewan, we were down to 14, so we'd only 1 inside, which meant they were able to run out the puck out, so the conditions made no difference. So we had to suffer for a while out there, and that's the character of the group. And when they suffered, we didn't bleed too much, I suppose, on the scoreboard. And when Ewan came back into the fray, then it gave us a little bit of a foothold. And, but again, it's Munster Championship hurling. The reality here is you just have to win the match. It doesn't matter, like I said, and thankfully tonight we did.
And in that second half, at times, even when it was 15, we seem to have a lot of men back the field, only kind of 2 maybe up inside the 45. Is that how just the kind of game played out, or was that kind of a planned move?
Yeah, it's kind of the game, I suppose, the way the game played out. In the way the game has gone, if you have 2 inside, and we knew that McDonald was going to be sweeping there in front, so there was no point in playing with 6 forwards, 7 forwards, because it's too congested. So we just hope to get the ball in a little bit better, and that's something we'll have to work on in the coming weeks as well. That you're right, the space was left inside there, and maybe we didn't deliver as much as we should have. And Waterford, in fairness, in the first half got a lot of ball into Conor Tobin when Sam was that bit too far up the pitch. So when he stepped back, that cut off Conor Tobin. So it was that kind of a game, if you know what I mean. Both teams knew there was going to be a spare at the back, and so they were cautious about hitting it in, I suppose. And you can't beat the endeavour of both sides there tonight. It was just real dogged stuff, like.
I suppose, Brendan, there 2 points, 2 games, 4 points. You have 3 weeks now before the next game. I suppose you'll have time to reflect back on the 2 opening games.
Yeah, no doubt it is, and it's a nice position to be in. But in this championship, like, the head-to-head is really important. So we've Clare coming to the Hurlers now. They wouldn't have been happy the way they performed the last day. They will be an awful lot better. They've won this grade 3 years ago at under 17 level, so they will get better as the championship progresses, and they'll have another game under their belt before they play us. But yeah, to have 4 points on the board is the ideal scenario for us, and you're right, we have an awful lot to work on, and we'll do that.
Look what I suppose, while Ewan was off there, that 10 minutes, you held Waterford just to 1 point coming up towards the end of that 10 minutes, and that was probably a contributing factor overall.
It was, like, we had Cormac inside by himself, and so that meant on the puck out they had 4v1 and they were able to work it out a bit. But in fairness to Jack Hayes, gave us good energy when he came on as well, and Owen Dahan did really well, and he was just gassed out in the finish up. And so the effort to chase the ball down was really positive when we were down to 14, and we needed that because we couldn't have him looking up when Power came in as well for Waterford the second half. He's an amazing young man, and he did really, really well for them, and so we just had to stop the supply as best we could to him.
Just the period after half time, that kind of 10 or 11 minutes before the penalty, was it shot selection, or was there anything you could kind of attribute to, I suppose, coming out and just being that bit flatter after half time?
Yeah, we just didn't get into the step of the game just after half time. I suppose the team coming out, going out playing against the wind, is always going to be more steeled up, we'll call it, that we're going to go after this right from the start, don't even get a foothold, all that kind of stuff, and they did that, and they worked the ball really well. But we knew, again, like I said, we had to suffer at times here, and I thought the lads suffered really well out there, and the period when Ewan was gone and when Waterford were on top, we didn't do so bad, but the important thing was in the finish that while we did miss a few chances as well, there's no good in saying otherwise, we left Waterford a tad in the game at times, but glad just to get away. It was a surreal feeling after the game at full time, wasn't it?
What does the 3 weeks look like now until that Clare game?
Well, it'll be rest of bodies now for the next couple of days, and then we'll just have to get on to watching what our Clare are playing next week against Limerick. I think it's on a 6 Mile Bridge. Might head up to that for a look, and we just have to make sure now that we reset. We learn from what's happened in the last 2 matches, and that's what we have to do, and be better the next day, because we will have to be an awful lot better to beat there.
I suppose overall, just put you in that strong position, 2 from 2, kind of 3 getting out, or well placed so far?
Yeah, well, so far so good, I think, is what it is. But the reality is, if you lose the next 2 games on the head-to-heads, Limerick have you and Clare have you. So it's just the normal thing that we love about this championship. Every game is a knockout match, and we're going to treat the next game against the same way against Clare in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, and Cork had a big win tonight. Good win over Limerick in Limerick's first outing.
Yeah, they won by 9 points tonight. I see that, and they were 6 up at half time. Cork are a very, very good team now, and if both ourselves and Cork look back on that game last week, no more than today now, and this is Munster Championship hurling, another day it would go against you. So we all know we're all as good or as bad as each other when the time comes, and you just hope on any given day you get the breaks. Thankfully in Thurles last week we got him, more so again tonight we got him, and that leaves us top of the table, thankfully.
That was Brendan Cummins speaking to myself, John O'Shea and Stephen Barry of the assembled media there after Wednesday night's game in Fraher Field, and to look back on that game and to talk a bit about the county championship draws that took place last night. I'm delighted to say I'm joined on the line now by Head of Sport at the Nenagh Guardian, Shane Brophy. Shane, you're very welcome back to the show.
Hi, Paul.
Shane, we'll start with the under-20s, I suppose. We heard from Brendan Cummins there, and 2 wins from 2, a win against Cork and a win against Waterford, but a lot of criticism around the county, I think it's fair to say, about just the style of play that that Tipperary have shown, maybe particularly in that second half against Waterford on Wednesday night.
Yeah, like I said, from watching it at home and on Wednesday, like it wasn't easy on the eye from both sides. It was probably a very, I would just say, 2 teams playing a lot of a similar brand of hurling, a lot of congested play in the middle of the field. And yeah, it's the second half. Like, you think Tipperary scored 11 points into the wind in the first half, and I thought their setup was pretty good. You had Oisin O'Donoghue inside with Cormac Fitzpatrick and lads, and the rest of them sort of drifting out around the 65. But then in the second half, you nearly had just one inside, and not even maybe the rest of the forwards even behind her on 65. Yeah, it was. There's no doubt about it. I thought we probably made it a little bit hard on ourselves in terms of maybe being a bit too. Maybe it's hard to know whether defensive or maybe restricted in what we were trying to do. But look, we got away with penalty save and I suppose that the last gas free from Mark Hartley that went wide. But like Tip would probably reflect on maybe a lot of missed chances there in the second half, like Oisin O'Donoghue missed a couple of easy ones, Owen Dohan as well, balls dropping short into the keeper's hands. So look, there's no doubt about it. Look, for 2 wins out of 2, it probably has been a little unconvincing so far, but look, it's a great position to be in, to go into the Tip don't play for another 3 weeks, so like that's a good chunk of training coming up where maybe they can go away and look at things and maybe get players to gel together properly, because yeah, it does look like maybe they haven't quite gelled yet, and I suppose with the senior championship upcoming, and maybe you could be looking at the likes of Stephen Tobin and Oisin O'Donoghue maybe doubling up in terms of you'd be watching their minutes too. Can they play midweek after a Sunday game, depending on how much they play? So look, from that point of view, like 2 wins out of 2, like Tip are, bar a bad set of results, are probably guaranteed a semi-final at worst at this stage, but you'll be hoping for more starting with Clare in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, and you mentioned Stephen Tobin, like he's had a brilliant start to this under-20 championship, and he really impressed in his first senior start against Waterford in the National League. Like, do you reckon he's right there in amongst the mix to be playing against Cork on April 19th?
Oh, I'd have no doubt about it. Like, I mean, we've seen in the past with Liam Cahill, he's prepared to throw guys in. We saw with Joe Caesar last year in the first round of the championship against Limerick. Peter McGarry in an All-Ireland quarter-final. If he feels you're playing well enough, you'll get a chance. And look, I suppose if we were to call it now, you were probably looking at, based on the league, and you're thinking last year starting 6 forwards, we'd do the same again. But in some ways that'd be a dangerous thing too, because you want competition for places, and sort of the likes of Oisin O'Donoghue, who doesn't want to be an impact sub this year. Stephen Tobin starting, I think he'd be a great impact sub if players are tiring in the second half. So yeah, I think we're in a nice place, and so not to mention maybe the likes of Cahill O'Reilly, and then you're looking at the likes of Jamie Ormond, who you can actually see why Jamie has been drafted into the senior squad in recent weeks. His performances, particularly in the second half against Cork and in the first half against Waterford, were very, very good.
Yeah, I've been extremely impressed as well with Cormac Fitzpatrick with the under-20s so far this year. So that's where the under-20s lie anyway. 3 weeks off, as Shane said, April 22nd, they're at home to Clare. And tonight, of course, we heard from James Woodlock, the minor hurlers are in action against Clare at 7 o'clock, so just coming up here. And the under-20s as well, we heard from Paddy O'Gorman earlier in the show. They're on back in action this evening in not a must-win, but it's a must-win or must-draw game for Tipperary to get out of that group. So it's a busy evening of Gaelic games, and then Monday we've our minor footballers back out in action on Monday evening. I think they're away to Waterford on Monday evening at 7 o'clock. So that's what's coming up over the weekend. But last night, Shane, always big excitement when the county draws are made for the county championships. And they're a long ways away, late July and early August for the hurling and football championships. But we'll go down through them, starting with the senior hurling. And as it always tends to be the way in Tipperary, we're blessed with our hurling championships and how competitive they are. There's 4 very tasty groups there, particularly Group 1 and 2, I think, are very, very interesting groups there. Group 1, Holy Cross, Killer 1, Sarsfields and Upperchurch, and Group 2, Lockmore, Mycarkey, Bursalee and Clonalty. Like, very, very even groups there.
Yeah, and I suppose the way I was looking at it when I went through it and said, while it's very open at the top, there's actually no obvious, maybe clear favourite for relegation at this stage. So like that I think that speaks volumes. Like people will maybe automatically veer to maybe the likes of Roscrea and Mullinahone, who were involved in the playoffs last year. But there's enough talent there that if they pull it together in a year and get a couple of early results, that they won't end up in a knockout stage. But as you say, I think there are 4 very interesting groups here. I think Group 1 is probably the most eye-catching one, particularly for Upperchurch and Van. It's a tough welcome back to senior level with Thurles and Holy Cross. But the fact that they're very, very familiar with both of those teams, they're only 2 years gone from senior, so like that won't bother them the slightest. And the Killer One will have a lot to say there. And then you go to Group 2, where the 3 in a row chase and Lockmore. You have Mycarkey, probably disappointed maybe last year, like they didn't build on getting to the semi-final the year before. And then you have probably Bursalee and Clonalty, probably 2 clubs that are probably have underachieved the last few years for maybe the level of talent they have. And I guess Clonalty have made a good start to the league. Bursalee probably struggling a bit at the start of the league. It'll be interesting to see how will they pick things up over the next few weeks and months.
And looking at Group 3 then, you've Drum, Cashel Kincormacs, Roscrea and Killadangan. And Group 4 then, you've 2 of the last beaten county finalists in Nenagh Guardian and Toomevara, along with JK Brackens and Mullinahone. So again, loads of interesting matchups there in those 2 groups, and hard to tell who's going to come out and who's going to drop out of those groups.
Yeah. Group 3 is intriguing. It's like if you're to go on the early league form, Killadangan look like a club that they're really going to go hard at it this year with Dan Hackett back in there. That they're fit and they're firing early. Like they were sluggish in the league last year, and like they probably never hit their stride in the championship, even though they won the North Championship. Like, so I'd be expecting a Killadangan to come out of that group, but then I think it'll be a toss up between the other 3, Cashel, Drum and Roscrea. Like, I think that'll be a dogfight for second place there. You go to Group 4, you have that traditional great rivalry between Nenagh and Toom starting up again. Like, you have JK Brackens. I don't think we saw the best of them last year. Even though they won the mid-championship, they probably just didn't, for their form in the county championship sort of deteriorated after that. So it'd be interesting to see if they can find their best form then. And of course Mullinahone just stayed up last year and won the relegation final. But again, if they can pull things together, there's no reason why maybe why they can't maybe upset the apple cart. But again, overall, like 4 very, very good and enticing groups. And I suppose late July, when they're due to kick off, maybe hopefully mid-August, if Tipperary get to an All-Ireland, ideally we'd like to get back to the same scenario again. But I'm sure when it starts, it'll be intriguing stuff nonetheless.
Yeah, as it always tends to be. As I said, we're very blessed with the standard and competitiveness of the particularly the senior championship, but across all the 3 grades. If we look at the Premier Intermediate hurling championship draw that was made last night, some very interesting groups pitting a lot of divisional rivals against each other. Group 1, you've Gartnahoe Glengool, Silvermines, Moyne Temple Toohey and Sean Tracy's, and Group 2 is the South Championship along with Thurles Sarsfields. You've Carrick Swan, Killinall, St Mary's, and as I said, Thurles Sarsfields. So those 2 groups, Shane, even Group 2, looking at that, like, I think Carrick Swan, Killinall and Mary's were in the same group last year as far as I remember, so they'll be sick of each other.
Yeah, I think Clonakilty were in it, so it's just Thurles Sarsfield's taking Clonakilty's place. Like, so it's yeah, like it's, and then you're talking those three clubs will be playing each other in a South Championship as well. Well, two of them at least, and maybe all three. So yeah, it's going to be dog eat dog stuff, and like you have Gorton who in Group 1, like always one of the contenders, was probably the unlucky team last year, just lost by a point. Upper Church, who went on to win the county championship. They've been knocking at the door for the last few years. Yeah, with the likes of Silver Mines there as well, and you're probably hoping for maybe the Mines would kick on. They've had some good underage teams the last few years. And of course, Sean, is it Sean Tracy's in there? I don't have the
Sean Tracy's on Mine Temple 2.
Yeah, Mine Temple 2. He's like Mine and Sean Tracy seem to be in a lot of groups most years. Like, so they're very familiar with each other. So yeah, you probably fancy Gorton Who plus I think a dogfight for second place out of Group 1.
Yeah, and Group 2, like, Carrick Swan beaten in back-to-back finals. They'll be going all out to try and get back to that level and go one more in Group 2. Group 3 is an all-North division group. So we've Lura dropping down from the senior grade, Moneygall, Templederry and Burgess. So Burgess and Lura meet again, Shane, and a lot of familiarity between all four teams there in that group.
Oh yeah, sure. Like Lura and Templederry met in a relegation final in senior in 24, and Lura and Moneygall met in an intermediate final in 2002. So like, yeah, there's a lot of, and of course Burgess and Templederry met in relegation last year. I think Burgess and Moneygall met twice in the championship. So like all very familiar with each other. And there's probably the likelihood when the North Championship draw is made that some of these same pairings will probably pop up as well. I'm sure. I wonder, will there be a bit of maybe for that the Mines of Ballina in different groups, will there be interested in maybe spreading them out a bit? There'll be a lot of familiarity too. Like you couldn't call that group at this stage. It was like when you have local derbies and this thing, it's all about form and like what players are available at a certain time. Like, you think how will my own club Lura bounce back after being relegated? Like, talent wise still very strong, but it's a psychological thing. You think Burgess are building nicely. They have good underage teams coming through. Like Moneygall settled in well at intermediate level last year. Can they kick on? And of course Templederry, I was very surprised they ended up in relegation last year, but like they probably have the best marquee forward in the grade in Sean Ryan, who's capable of winning games on his own, and be interesting to see how they go. But yeah, it's a very, very open group. And
Group 4, then you have the newcomers Golden Kilfeacle in there with their West Tipperary counterparts in Éire Óg Carty, and near neighbours in the mid-division Borlath and Duella, along with Ballina. Like, that now on paper is a particularly open group, I think.
Oh yeah, if you're for Golden coming up into a new grade, like that's a salivating draw. Like you have your neighbours in Anacarty in the west, and then you have your neighbours in the mid and Boherlan, who you lost in a county intermediate final a couple of years ago. So like that's the pulses racing already for the likes of Golden. If they didn't need any more motivation, they have it now, and excitement. And don't rule out Ballina, like won a North Premier Intermediate last year. They took a step on. Loads of good talent. It's just that if Ballina can get their best 15 on the field on a regular basis with injuries, and of course, like they're a dual club now, and they've been handed a tough group in senior football as well. It's about managing. If they can get a bit of luck with injuries and be able to get that through that week on week, like I think Ballina, a bit of a dark horse, but yeah, I think that's a wide open group. I particularly find how can Boherlahan kick on, like got to a county semi-final last year, maybe a year or two ahead of schedule, maybe with a good young team, but yeah, they're definitely probably favourites for that group, and I think it'll be but I wouldn't be surprised like you have Anacarty like probably underachieved a small bit last year. Be interested to see if they can kick on this year.
Yeah, just a fascinating grade, the Premier Intermediate. So tight between nearly all 16 teams. We'll just fly through the intermediate because we're under time pressure here. But Group 1, you've Knockavilla, Kilsheelan, Portroe and Clonulty. Group 2, Clonakilty, Arvale Rovers, Shannon Rovers and Carrick Davins. Group 3, Kappa White, Ballingarry, Holy Cross Ballycahill and Skahina Rinky. And Group 4, Bursacane, Mull Rovers, Ballybacon Grange and Newport. Anything just kind of catching your eye in the intermediate draw, Shane, or any kind of favourites you'd have on this very early stages of the year?
I still think you're probably looking at the last year's defeated finalists, Knockavilla Kickham's as the early favourites, and like they'd be strong favourites to come out of Group 1. I think Group 3 is very intriguing. I think you have Kappa White and Ballingarry, who are there or thereabouts, and like I I think like Holy Cross Ballycahill's second team will be very, very strong. Like there's a ferocious pick in that club at the moment, and the senior team is going well. And if they even if they use 20 players at senior level, like the quality they'll have at there, I wouldn't be surprised if Holy Cross, who came up from junior, maybe go straight into the knockout stages. That they'll be one I'll be watching throughout the campaign.
Yeah, and looking at the Senior Football Championship draw now, Group 1, Commercials, Ballina, Aherlow and Ardfinnan. Group 2, Kilsheelan, JK Brackens, Ballyporeen and newcomers Thurles Sarsfields. And Group 3, Lockmore, Upperchurch, Moyle Rovers and Grange Mokler. So just looking at that group in the football, and I believe is this top 2 go through and the best group winners go straight through to a semi-final with the remaining 4 teams playing quarter-finals, I would imagine. But if you're looking at Upperchurch Drumban, they're probably looking at the draws from last night thinking, God, we haven't got one easy draw whatsoever across hurling and football.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I suppose this is probably what the football committee were aiming when they were reducing the teams from 16 to 12 is what we're getting in Group 3 now. And like you're guaranteed that one of Upperchurch, Lockmore and Moyle Rovers, nearly perennial knockout teams for the last couple of years, won't make the knockout stages, and that's not downplaying Grange Mokler or Ballyneal, a young team coming through. Like they'll probably have a lot to say in that too. Like so, it. Like the aim of reducing the number of teams in senior, I suppose tightening up the intermediate championship, is making the group stages more competitive, and definitely in terms of Group 3, and I think a little in terms of Group 2. Interesting to see how Thurles Sarsfields navigate the dual campaign this year, and like they're in a group with Ballyporeen and Jacob Brackens Kilsheelan. Like it's probably not it's a group you can really have a go at. Like there's none of traditional big heavy hitters in it, even though Kilsheelan and Brackens and will be thereabouts every year. But it's not a group that would put the fear of God in you either. So yeah, no, I think it'd be interesting to see how, now that we're down to 12 teams at the top 2 grades in the club football, that will we see really more competitive games in the group stage than maybe what we've got in recent years.
Yeah, and I'm sure JK Brackens and Thurles Sarsfields will love to see each other coming as well in the world of football, in the Senior Football Championship. A very competitive Intermediate Football Championship as well, because we've had all the relegations in the last couple of years. Last year 3 teams dropped down, so you have 3 groups of 4, 12 teams in total. Group 1, Care, Rockwell Rovers, Aerogannacarthy and Feathered. Group 2, Killinall, Commercial second team, Moyne Temple Tuohy and Clonmel, the newcomers there from the Premier Junior grade. And Group 3, Arvale Rovers, Golden Kilfeacle, Galtee Rovers and Moycarkey Burris. So again, with those teams dropping down, Shane, from senior, it's going to make the intermediate much more competitive, you'd imagine, as well.
It should do, and then you're probably, I'd be looking at the likes of maybe Care and Arvale, who came down last year. Like they'll probably, they've probably been beaten down the last couple of years in terms of suffering a lot of defeats, and that can suck a bit of morale. But if they can get a few early wins in this campaign and get a bit of momentum, like can they get to their knockout stages? Like you have Golden Kilfeacle are improving year on year as well, and Galtee Rovers have been there or thereabouts, and definitely a lot like the senior. I think the intermediate grade, provided there's no, I suppose there has been occasional maybe walkovers conceded. I'd be surprised if there's any now this year, because the championship is just, then there's no 3 team groups anymore, which maybe was a bit it knocked the competition maybe out of kilter a small bit, so everybody's in the same boat this year now going forward.
Yeah, much more settled feel to the football championship at large this year, now that it's kind of settled at 12 teams. Just before I let you go, Shane, Sunday, a big game in the Gaelic grounds, Cork against Limerick. Will have a lot of eyes on it here in Tipperary as we look ahead to April 19th against Cork. But how do you think this game will play out? Will they both go full on at it? What's your overall kind of opinion going into this league final on Sunday?
Yeah, I suppose the big intrigue for Tip will be on Cork, because it's 2 weeks till we meet in the Munster Championship. Limerick aren't out for 3 weeks, so Limerick can really go use this as a real, I suppose, perfect, I can say challenge match, but a real chance to put their best 15 out and go for it, and be able to taper down and taper back up, whereas Cork maybe have a bit more at risk. But like Cork probably, I'd be interested to see if Ben O'Connor maybe does go full belt, or maybe does he go 12 or 13 and maybe hold 1 or 2 maybe back as subs. But then maybe like you want to have something to fall back on in case things go badly and you want a bit of hope going into the Tipperary match. But you saw last year, like, Tipperary suffered in a league final, and we were all a bit concerned going into the Limerick game 2 weeks later, and we produced a big performance. So, like, I think Ben O'Connor will and John Kiley, I think we'll likely see their best 15s this weekend and take the game on its merits. And I said the Tipperary management will be, whether they're down there watching from the stands or maybe watching at home, will be eagle-eyed and probably have their own training game that morning. Like, you're probably assuming Tipperary, 2 weeks out from a championship, are probably going to have a right good A versus B match probably this weekend. So it's probably no different to maybe what Limerick and Cork are going to go at, maybe just a notch lower. But it's hard to believe we're only 2 weeks away from championship. We just hope the weather that we're looking at outside at the moment, maybe that it's coming for this weekend, will have blown away in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, hopefully as we will get closer and closer to championship. Loads to look forward to, Shane, as always. Thanks a million for joining us on the show.
Pleasure.
Well, let's take one last quick ad break here on Across the Line, and we'll look ahead to the rest of the weekend sporting action, and we'll talk greyhound racing coming up after these. And you're very welcome back to the third and final part of Across the Line here on Tipp FM with myself, Paul Carroll, on this Friday, the 3rd of April 2026. And our show is coming to you in association with the Premier Credit Union in Thurles. Now, to look ahead to the rest of the weekend sporting action, of course, on Saturday afternoon at 12:30, Munster take on the Exeter Chiefs in the Challenge Cup round of 16. A big game for Munster there. And, of course, Tipperary's Diarmuid Barron and Brian Gleeson not involved, both suffering from the effects of concussion last week, so they can't play this weekend. But also on Saturday, the AIL regular season comes to a conclusion, and Nenagh Ormond will hope to get a win in Division 1A before they drop back to Division 1B. They take on Old Belvedere in Dublin. Cashel have secured their status in Division 2A, and they can't reach the promotion playoffs at this point, so they see out their final game at home to Shannon in Spafield. And in Division 2C, Clonmel travel to Ballyclare, and a win for Clonmel would mean that they have a home playoff run as they're currently top of Division 2C. And all of those games on Saturday getting underway at 2:30. On Sunday, in the world of camogie, the Tipperary Under-23 camogie team have their first home game in the All-Ireland Championship. They're in the County Camogie Grounds in the Rag on Sunday at 2 o'clock to play Waterford. And on Sunday at 3 o'clock, Clonmel Town say goodbye to the TSDL Premier League, their final game of the season in the league, having already been summoned to relegation. They take on Peak Villa in Thurles at 3 o'clock on Sunday. And of course, a Peak Villa win would put one hand on the title for them as they have a final game of the season to come against St. Michael's. St. Michael's have a good few games in hand to try and catch up, but a big game there in the Tower Grounds on Sunday at 3 o'clock. And then on Monday evening, the Tipperary minor footballers are back in action, and they are down in Lemmy Bryan at 7 p.m. on Monday to take on Waterford, looking to bounce back from that first round loss to Limerick. And in the world of soccer, later tonight, Rare Cross host Holy Cross at 7:30, and that is under the lights there in the NTNDL Premier Division. So that is what's happening in the world of sport in Tipperary elsewhere around the county this weekend. But now, as always, at this time of a Friday evening, it's time to talk dogs with Barry Drake.
Tipp FM's Greyhound News Update with Limerick Greyhound Stadium. Enjoy top-class racing at the Con and Annie Kirby Memorial each Saturday night and check out their dinner or group packages.
It's another massive weekend in the world of greyhound racing with plenty of top-class racing action to look forward to all over the country. But we're going to start with the local action down at the Clonmel Greyhound Stadium tonight, where the first, of course, will go to traps at 7:30. In terms of predicting a couple of winners at Clonmel tonight, we're going to look ahead to race number 7, which is one of the feature races on the card. It's an A1 contest here with a couple of smart sorts in opposition. The likes of Torari Cuckoo created a favourable impression when winning last time in 28.70. It really was a performance of the highest order, and going on that, it could well record back-to-back winning performances. This one, of course, for the Back in the Hour syndicate in Johnstown. The obvious danger for me runs from trap number 6. That's Highview Magical, who's trained by Morris Horgan. This one, of course, has won 4 of its 9 career starts. Elsewhere on the card tonight, some other good races to look forward to. We're going to look ahead to race number 9, which is an A6, A7 contest. And keep an eye on trap number 2 here, Boozed Foxy, for Tipperary trainer Pádraig Campion. That was a good run in the feet last time, and going on that should take plenty of stopping. The obvious danger for me runs in trap number 4 here, Fox Rock Cooper for Canis Highland in Portlaoise. So that's the Clonmel race card that's down for decision tonight. Switching our attentions to Thurles Greyhound Stadium on Saturday night, where the first, of course, will get underway at 7 o'clock. One to keep an eye on Saturday night there in Thurles, also trained by Pádraig Campion, is a greyhound called Hollyhill Whisper, who runs in race number 6. This greyhound has caught the eye in 2 starts to date and should be in the mix here. But the one they all have to beat is trap number 4, Ashleen Subline, who was an impressive winner on debut for the Feel Good Racing Syndicate when clocking 29.76. And with improvement expected from that debut performance, that should be the one that takes all the beating. Moving on to Clonmel Track on Sunday night, their usual SIS racing programme down for decision on Sunday night, where the first, of course, will go at the traps at 4 minutes past 6. Looking ahead to race number 6, trap number 1, the Buzzy Bee ran well in the feet last time and certainly should go well from the inside of the track, but I'm going to side with trap number 3 here, Fox Rock Laura, who found trouble in running last time but still managed to run very well when finishing in 3rd. This one, of course, owned and trained by Brian Bowe, who's making the trip down from Laois. Elsewhere on the card on Sunday night, race number 8 is an A3 contest. Trap number 1, Wilderness Dream, came from off the pace to win last time for Declan Drohan, and from the inside of the track, back-to-back winning performances could be well on the card. Also in race number 9, Bolt of Lightning is taking a significant drop in class for local trainer Aaron O'Hanlon. Finished 3rd last time, and a reproduction of that should be good enough to see it return to winning ways. So that's the local action over the course of the weekend. But all eyes now turn to Limerick Greyhound Stadium on Saturday night, because over the last couple of weeks, the Con and Eddie Kirby Memorial competition with €80,000 to the winner has delivered some spectacular performances, of course, sponsored by Noreen and JP McManus. It always is one of the standout events on the racing calendar. In terms of Tipperary interest, well, Bocco's Gold is a leading player for Outright Glory, while a sensational winning performance last week when stopping the clock in 28 seconds flat, trained by Graham Holland, of course, for the Jolly Good Company Syndicate, and Bocco's Gold should prove very hard to beat there in the opening heat. Graham Holland, of course, has got Beano's Yank in the second heat, along with Ballydoyle Tina, who delivered a sensational performance to win in 27.87 last week. That was the run of the competition. Both look set to go well, but the one they'll have to beat here is trap number 2, Bouncing Monarch. This one, of course, for Tipperary trainer Michael O'Donovan, I should say. This greyhound, of course, has dipped under the 28-second barrier on its 2 winning performances over the course of the last couple of weeks. Ballycowan Frank can take heat number 3, also for Michael O'Donovan. And in the 4th and final heat, we're going with trap number 2, Get Up the Boy, for trainer Mark Robinson. So that's the €80,000 to the winner Con and Eddie Kirby Memorial competition there down in Limerick on Saturday night. And finally, in terms of this weekend, of course, looking ahead to the big Shelbourne Park Bookmakers Easter Cup final with €30,000 to the winner at Shelbourne Park on Saturday night. Of course, Tipperary interest with trap number 2, Callaway Kennygar, for Owen McKenna, trained in Newin, of course, set the standard when winning in 29.33 last week. If it can produce another quick start, should go very well. Droopy's Faithful, of course, for young handler Daniel O'Reilly, runs from trap number 4, and of course Paul Hennessy is doubly represented with Lenny's Madge in 5 and Lenny's Tank in 6. But I'm going for Cork Success with trap number 1, Lemon Orla, for Cork trainer Tom O'Neill. A lot to look forward to this weekend.
And many thanks, as always, to Barry Drake there for giving us the rundown on what's happening in the world of greyhound racing here in Tipperary and further afield as well. That's just about all we got time for this week's edition of the show. A reminder, Ronan Quirk will be looking back on all the weekend sporting action on Tuesday's edition of Across the Line. A reminder, no extra time on Monday, of course, Bank Holiday Monday. So it will be Tuesday at 7 o'clock where Ronan Quirk will reflect back on the weekend's sporting action. So that is it from us on this week's edition of Across the Line. It's bye for now.